Chairman, I'm delighted to be here with so many Hoosiers in this wonderful state, with so many friends. I'm accompanied by my sweetheart. We met about, I don't know how many years ago, but we've been married for 42 years. She's the mom of our 5 sons, our 16 grandkids. Say hi, sweetie.
Oh, it's great to be here. My mom grew up in Indiana, so this is great. And it was all basketball all the time, and that's what we grew up with too, so that's great. I know you all are basketball fans here. We had a great debate last night. And I have a feeling this fellow standing next to me really won the debate, and we're excited about that because we love America and we want to see that Obama is a one-term president, so we're going to make sure that Mitt does that.
Thanks, sweetie. Well, she is right that we saw something unusual over the last 3 years. We elected a president 3 years ago we didn't know very well. Didn't have a track record to look at, had no experience in the private sector, had really never led any kind of enterprise. And some people wondered what would happen if you chose as president of the United States someone who has no experience. Now we know. And it's not a very good thing. The president's mistakes internationally have had consequence which will last well beyond his term. But domestically, where we're confronted day by day with his failures, you recognize that this president has not lived up to the expectations of the American people. He's been a disappointment. And that's why we're going to follow through on a promise he made. You see, after he got inaugurated, he was on the Today Show, and he said, you know, if I can't get the economy turned around in 3 years, I'm looking at a one-term proposition. Well, I'm here to collect. The president came in and he says, look, he didn't cause the recession. And you know what? He's right. The recession was underway. The economy was already sliding when he came in. But he didn't make it better. He put in place a borrowing program, a stimulus program, so to speak, borrowed almost $800 billion. And said he'd hold unemployment below 8% if we gave him that money to borrow. And hasn't been below 8% since. Today you have 25 million Americans that are out of work or stopped looking for work or in part-time jobs and can't get the full-time work that they need. You've got people all over this country who are sitting across from kitchen tables and taking out their checkbook and their calculator and seeing whether they can make ends meet at the end of the month. You got folks that are sitting down filling out job applications, knowing that there are hundreds of other people filling out an application for that very same job. This president has failed, and it's time to get a president in office who knows how to create jobs. I spent my life in the private sector. I know how the economy works. One of the things I learned was that there's one thing entrepreneurs and businesses can't deal with. We can deal with bad news. Businesses encounter bad news all the time. What we can't deal with as entrepreneurs and innovators is uncertainty. And virtually everything the president did increased uncertainty in this country. Those in financial services, bankers, were frightened by the uncertainty created by the Dodd-Frank bill. Those that are in the energy field pulled back and were concerned with the uncertainty associated with cap and trade. If you're in a people-intensive industry, the decision made against Boeing in South Carolina calls you to pull back. If you're in healthcare, do you like Obamacare? No, each one of these things caused our economy to pull back at the very time we needed it to step forward. This president does not understand how the economy works. I'm convinced that to create jobs, it helps to have had a job. Now, I get asked now and then, how is it that the president has made so many errors? Why was he so ineffective? How is it he asked Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid to get us out of the mess we were in? They had even less experience than he had, if that's possible. And I love the old line Ronald Reagan gave about that. He said, you know, it's not that liberals are ignorant. It's just that what they know is wrong. And what he did was simply wrong. But there's something else. I'm convinced that this president fundamentally believes that Europe got it right and that we got it wrong. fundamentally believes that government guiding our lives, that government telling businesses how they can grow and where they can expand and where they can't open factories, that government telling us how to get our health care and which procedures we can have and which we can't and which doctor we can have and which insurance we can have, that if you have government guiding our lives, that we'll do better than if people free are able to choose their own course in life. Now, I don't think Europe is working in Europe. I know it won't work in America. And I'm convinced that the right course for us is to hold true to those beliefs that made America the powerful nation we are. I believe in America. I believe in American freedom and in American opportunity. When the founders crafted this country, the brilliance of those men just continues to astound me. They gave us political freedom. They shifted the relationship between the state and the people. No longer was the state the sovereign and the people the servants. They flipped that. The people became sovereign. The state became servant. And then they gave us another freedom, economic freedom. They said we would be free not only to choose who represents us, but free to choose our course in life. And by virtue of those two freedoms, people from all over the world came here. This was the land of opportunity, the land of freedom. American freedom brought people from all over the world. That's what made us who we are. It's in our DNA, this love for freedom and liberty. Every pioneer, every innovator, they wanted to come to America. And what frightens me about President Obama and the people around him is they don't understand that. And slowly but surely they're crushing the spirit that makes us such a powerful economic engine. I love freedom and opportunity. I love free enterprise. I love capitalism. You know, I know in some circles it's not popular to say you love capitalism, but look around the world and ask, has there been any antidote to poverty that's ever worked other than capitalism? American-style free enterprise that we promoted around the world with trade, with the exchange between nations, with currencies that exchange. These elements of our free economic system that we've introduced around the world, they're now being copied in places like China. And every year 10 to 20 million people come out of poverty thanks to American-style entrepreneurialism and enterprise and capitalism. I'm proud of what we've taken around the world. I love the Constitution. I believe that when the founders created the Constitution, they had other extraordinary innovations. One was federalism. It's a strange term we use to describe the idea that states, not the federal government, that states are the place where the power resides that affects us most day to day, for our schools, for the health care, for our poor. I love federalism. States compete. It's a good thing. We learn from each other. I love the Constitution. I love freedom. I love free enterprise. I love opportunity. And I love the American people. I know right now that in some circles, there are people who are skeptical about the future of America because they don't know the American people terribly well. And they point out the challenges we have. And I've had the chance to go around the country, meet a lot of people. I come away not more cynical, but more optimistic. We're a very patriotic people. We love this country. We're willing to sacrifice for this country. Too many politicians over the last decades have become elected by promising free stuff to Americans. And a lot of folks will vote for that. But some of the greatest words that were spoken politically were spoken by someone on the other side of the aisle, JFK, John F. Kennedy, when he said, "Ask not what the country will do for you, but what you will do for the country." We are a people longing to serve this land we love. Our patriotism and that entrepreneurial spirit, the innovative spirit, the freedom-loving nature of our people will allow us to overcome any challenges that we might face. I, day to day, see that spirit. When I was serving as governor of my state, I remember on one day, my office got a call saying that the body of a soldier was returning to Massachusetts and that the family had been unable to be notified in time to receive the body at the airport. And they wondered if I could go to the airport to receive the body in their behalf. And of course I said yes. We got in our car, drove to the airport. The U.S. Air jet came in, Passengers got off, luggage came down the conveyor, and finally, down came this casket down the conveyor. And I put my hand on my heart. The state troopers who were there with me all stood at attention and saluted. And as they were putting the casket in the hearse there, I happened to look up at the terminal. It's a big glass wall there at U.S. Air in Boston by their terminal where the jet had come in. I looked up there. It seems that the people who had been on the jet saw the police cars. They were with me. And so they wanted to see what was going on. So they were pressed up against the glass to look at what was happening. And then the people walking down the hall behind them, they saw the people lined up against the glass. They got in behind them as well to see what's going on. And they saw that hearse. And every person I saw had their hand over their heart. And as I looked at their faces, you could see the look of sorrow and respect. We are a patriotic people. We love this country. And I'm convinced that despite our challenges, and you know what they are, government out-of-control spending, promises of $62 trillion that haven't been funded for our entitlements, jihadists that want to kill us, China becoming an emerging power, Russia resurgent, Iran about to become nuclear. We face some real challenges. But I'm convinced that by drawing on the patriotism of the American people and our love for this country, that if we have leaders that will tell us the truth, who will live with integrity and actually know how to lead, know how to strengthen our economy, know how to rebuild the greatness that is America, that we'll rise to the occasion and keep America strong and prosperous and the hope of the earth. And I will do that with your help. Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys.
And thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming. I want to also say a special thank you to two people, Dan and Dana Dumazich. These events, while they're free to attend, aren't free to put on. And Dan and Dana, thank you so much for stepping up. Governor, if you would, just take a few questions. Like our Governor, Mitch Daniels, you spent much of your life in the private sector, and you've had to make ends meet and live within the means. When you were called upon in a very special circumstance, unique as it was, to really save the Olympics in 2002, can you draw on some lessons learned from that experience and how you might apply that to the federal platform?
Well, I'll tell you, I learned from watching your governor. You got an extraordinary governor. I'll tell you, that man is amazing. And he's led by an able chief of staff and chairman of the party too. So this is what a team. And we're watching what's happening here. I mean, Indiana is proving that conservative principles work in government. For a long time, people have thought that government and business and the not-for-profit sector are all very, very different. But actually, the principles that apply in business do pretty well in government as well. This idea that you face up to your problems honestly, that you look at data, that you gather information, that you work with people across the table to see if you can find common ground, those are principles that work. I had the fun of going out to Salt Lake City to help organize their Olympics after they got in trouble. I'd spent 25 years in business at that point. And the governor of that state, having seen that my work entailed turnarounds, fixing things that had been broken, said, maybe you can help us fix the Olympics. And you know what? It was, I have to be honest, it was the experience of a lifetime. Because I came into an organization where everyone was pulling together. We knew we were in for something bigger than ourselves. We'd all lose our job on the same day. Can you imagine having an organization with literally thousands of employees, a budget of almost $2 billion, and we all knew that at a certain day we'd all be out of work. And yet we worked our hearts out. And we did the things that you always do in a turnaround. Number one, focus. Focus, focus. Focus on the most important aspects of what you're doing and get that done right. That's the crazy thing about watching President Obama in this economy. He came in with the economy going down. Instead of focusing his energy on the economy, he delegated that to Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. And then he went off on his own agenda. And now, 3 years later, he's trying to make up for it, flailing around looking for answers. He does not know how to fix this economy. That's why he's going to be gone. So number one was focus, focus, focus on the things that were most important. Number two is make sure you put a great team in place. Have the right people to do the job that needs to be done. If you've ever been in a turnaround, you know that you focus on what's important, then you get the right people to make it work, because you can't do it all by yourself. Now, the president put together a team Let's say you somehow were elected president of the United States and the economy was in terrible shape. Who would you surround yourself with? Who would you put in your cabinet? Well, he chose politicians and academics, no business people. Can you imagine such a thing? Wouldn't you say, I'm going to have small business people and big business people and people who understand how the economy works around me? But that's not what he did. So number one focus, number two was getting a great team around me, and then number three was counting on some very good people in the community to come together. We knew that we needed a lot of volunteers at our Olympics. I didn't know exactly how many when I came in the door. We needed 24,000 people to give us 17 straight days. And in exchange for that, guess how many tickets they got to Olympic events? None. They'd be working the whole time. And these were glamorous jobs like parking lot attendant, cleaning off the chairs at the Olympic events of snow, because a lot of these events were outdoors, and if it snowed overnight, people had to get there in the morning and clean off all the snow from these bleachers. Those are the kinds of jobs they were. And I wondered, in a city of, I don't know, 150,000 or so in Salt Lake City, whether we could get 24,000 adults to give us 17 straight days without pay. I wondered about asking people to give and to serve, as we would be asking those folks, particularly after the games had been besmirched by stories of corruption and bribery. And so on the big day, we went on the air, we advertised on the radio, went on the web and said, please sign up if you want to be a volunteer. 47,000 people signed up. 47,000 people. And so we had to sift through to make sure that we had the best that we could possibly have, and told a lot of folks, I'm sorry, you can't be a volunteer. We have so many volunteers. And that's what made the game so special. The people who, afterwards, the guy who was the producer for NBC Sport, his name is, he's the president, or was, of NBC Sports, named Dick Ebersol. He said these were the most successful Olympics we've ever had. And the reason for that was those 24,000 some odd people, Americans, who knew we were in trouble, needed help, who said, I'll serve, I'll volunteer. It is so quintessentially American that any enterprise in trouble, if one draws upon the goodness of the American spirit and the greatness of America, will be successful. And that's a lesson I learned from the Olympics, and I appreciate that opportunity. Perhaps one of the finest opportunities in life was to be part of something where people give of themselves. It is in the nature of Americans to give and sacrifice for the things we love. And it's one of the reasons I love this country. Thank you.
Thank you. If saving an Olympics that was some hundreds of millions in the hole wasn't enough, you also answered another very important call and stepped up and became governor of Massachusetts, and which at the time I think had a spending problem. You were somehow able to bring about $1 billion worth of spending cuts. I mean, to the point, how'd you do it?
Well, thank you. How did I get elected in Massachusetts in the first place, all right? How does that happen? Well, I'd been out there running the Olympics, and some people said if he can run the Olympics that was in trouble and turn them around, maybe we can get him to come into our state. Because we thought when I ran for office that our budget shortfall would be about $1 billion. And so I promised to people, I said, look, if you'll elect me, I will not raise taxes, and I won't cut vital services. And then I got elected, and my chief financial officer went to work and looked at the books, and he came back and said, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we do not face a $1 billion shortfall. We face a $3 billion shortfall. And I wondered how we'd do it. And the answer was by cutting out programs and spending that wasn't essential. And we were able to get the state back on track without raising taxes on the American people or the people in my state, and without cutting vital services. We also put in place, by the time I left, over a $2 billion rainy day fund. Now, how does that happen in a state where there are a few Democrats? Just a few. My legislature was about 85% Democrat. Can you imagine? And I remember going to them early on and saying, we're in real financial trouble. And I'd like you to give me the authority to cut the budget unilaterally without a legislative vote. I want you to give me a carte blanche for cutting the budget to balance it. And I'm sure they said, well, this novice Republican governor, go ahead, give him enough rope to hang himself. And they gave me that power. And I was able to cut the budget, live within our means. And I remember I was on a radio talk show once, and someone said, Governor, I disagree with all the things you're doing, but I sure respect you for doing what you said you're going to do. And I just happen to think that in this country, while everybody wants a lot of free stuff promised by politicians, we know it can't go on forever. And we're looking for people who are willing to draw the line and to say we will not continue year after year to spend more money than we take in. We believe in fiscal responsibility. That's what I did. That's what's happening right here under Governor Mitch Daniels. Thank you.
One last question, if you would, Governor Romney. You've been supportive in the past of the line item veto. What would that mean to the next president of the United States to have that in your toolbox?
You know, it would really change the relationship between the executive branch and the legislative branch to have the line item veto. I had it in Massachusetts. Boy, that was great. I vetoed over 800 measures as governor. Isn't that fun? I mean, it was just terrific. And it means you could have an impact. And you can look at areas where there's waste and you can go after that area and focus on it. Vetoes have such extraordinary power. Just amazing. We had an interesting court decision. The Supreme Court of my state said that a tax hike that had occurred on capital gains in the middle of the year was unconstitutional. You couldn't raise the tax in the middle of the year. So they said you have a choice. You either have to go back and give people back the money. This was from years before, by the way. They'd raised the tax. There was a number of years ago. They said you got to go back to those people and give them a refund for the extra money you took, or you can go back to them and get more money for the full year. Now you can imagine what my legislature did. They voted to go back to those people and get them to give more money for a prior year. And I vetoed that. Now, with a legislature 85% Democratic, how was I going to get that veto upheld? You can't just sign your paper. You got to go out and go to work. And so I asked our Department of Revenue to send out a tax bill to all the people who might see higher taxes if my veto wasn't upheld, with exactly how much they were going to owe. And said, you know, this is going to happen to you unless you get in touch with your legislature and get them to agree with my veto. And as the great Everett Dirksen once said, when they felt the heat, they saw the light. And my legislature upheld my veto. We gave people a refund rather than a tax increase. I was proud of the fact we cut taxes 19 times. I had to cut them more and lower them more. They'd have gone along with me more. But the line item veto in Washington would allow a president to pick out those parts of a bill that don't make sense, and by the way, then allow Congress to vote on them. I'm happy. If they want to say, look, there's something that the president pulled out and vetoed, but we want it back in, let them vote on that. But when it all comes together in one big package of oatmeal, it's hard to pick the fly out of there. And I'm going to pick those flies out of the oatmeal and make sure that we have a chance to vote on them one by one or crush them like they deserve, because right now we're spending too much. We're getting legislation that's overburdening our economy. As Eric mentioned, I guess I should call you Mr. Chairman. Chairman Holcomb mentioned, I spent my life in business, 25 years in business, small business, medium-sized business. I worked with big businesses, both as a consultant to them and ultimately invested in some pretty big businesses. And in that experience, I competed with businesses in other parts of the world. And I saw what worked and what did not work to create a strong economy. And I came up with, borrowing a title from the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I came up with 7 habits of highly effective economies. And you've heard me rehearse these before, but I'm just going to remind you in case you didn't. There's 7 things I think you have to do for our economy to be robust and dynamic and leading the world. One is employer tax rates need to be competitive with other nations. Right now ours aren't. They're the highest in the world. 2 is the regulators and bureaucrats and regulations have to be streamlined, modernized, up to date, and encouraging the private enterprise of a community and a nation, as opposed to burdening it. Government in this nation sees business as the enemy too often. We need to have business seen as the beneficiary of regulation and regulators and government. That's number 2. Number 3, You have to have trade policies that work for us, not just for the other guys. And when other people cheat like China does, you got to say no more. We're not going to allow that. Number four, when you have as much energy as we have, natural gas, oil, coal, nuclear, as well as our renewable resources, you take advantage of those instead of spending billions of dollars buying energy from other people. That strengthens your economy. Number five, you got to have the rule of law. Now you think, well, we have the rule of law. Well, that's true. But we also have a president who appointed labor stooges to the National Labor Relations Board to do the bidding of organized labor, to tell a company like Boeing they can't build a factory that's going to employ 7,000 people in South Carolina because it's a right-to-work state. Let me tell you, the Americans have a right to work, and they should not be forced to have unions put upon them. Number six, you got to have great schools, great universities, building human capital. This is critical for a powerful economy. You also have to have immigration policies that work for you. By the way, legal immigration, that's a great thing. That's very important to America. And you probably know that I'm not wild about illegal immigration. It threatens legal immigration. Right now, I'm absolutely convinced we got to have a fence. We got to have enough Border Patrol agents to patrol the fence, and we got to turn off the magnets that bring people here illegally, like giving breaks for in-state tuition. And number seven, only one more. Number seven is this. You think about this. If you're a small business person or a big company wanting to invest and build a new factory, you got to know whether the future of that country you're going to put your factory in or put your investment in is going to be like that of Greece, or instead of it's going to be one that's growing and robust like America of old. And to make sure we're not like a Greece, you have to make sure that consistently the government does not spend more money than it takes in. You got to cut spending and balance the budget, which I'll do. All seven of those habits we've been breaking. All seven we've been breaking for the last couple of years, last 3 years. And I don't think Barack Obama's a bad guy. I got to be honest with you. I think he's a nice guy. I just think he's way out of his depth. Don't think he has a clue how to run the economy. I do. I'm going to work to put America back to work, and I want to make sure that we have the bright future that people in Indiana can be proud of. Thanks, you guys. Great to be with you.